It's time to look at the weekend newspapers, and to help me make sense of the headlines, I'm joined by Ditego. He's the CEO at Ditego Media, and as well as my usual sparring partner, Sikunati Manchantra, Scorpio Associate Editor. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Let me talk about the two issues that are obviously on everybody's minds in the economy at the moment. The one is, of course, SAA, and the other one is Eskom. Let's start with SAA. The Mail and Guardian is right in front of you, Tebogo. Let's talk about SAA being, going into voluntary rescue. What do you make of it? Is it just another word for privatization?
We wouldn't know. If you look at the issues around Eskom, they've been going on for quite some time. And
I'm talking about SAA now.
SAA, yeah, they've been going on for quite some time. And the current operating loss looks at around 6 billion rands. If you look at the global prices, it's reported in the city press that they went down by 40%. So they were practically collapsing before our eyes. So it was necessary for action to be taken. There's been a variety of things that have been looked at, such as retrenchments, which wouldn't have been a political move that would have been popular. So I think that it's a bit difficult right now for them, because voluntary rescue happens just before you file for bankruptcy. And they are practically technically bankrupt.
Sikunati, this story says that the minister intervened at the last moment, that the board was actually going to close shop. If we are to believe the Mail and Guardian, was it correct for Pravin Gordhan to intervene and go into voluntary rescue, or should they have closed shop?
I will answer that now, but I just want to answer your first question to Tebogo about whether this is another word for privatization. Privatization is the one P word that we should be using a lot more often. It's one good word together with the other P word, profit. Now, South African Airways doesn't know what profit is, has not known what profit is for many years. Business rescue is not privatization, but the business rescue practitioner has got wide powers to say, okay, this business, who wants to buy it? And off he goes. The creditors, the people who actually have invested money in South African Airways, can then decide whether they vote for that plan or not. That's the thing. Was the minister correct in pushing the company to business rescue? It was the board of directors that did so. Yes, of course, at the recommendation of the shareholder, but it was the board, and this is just the one step before liquidation. They could have just done a very disorderly thing and said on Friday 4 p.m., as the Mail and Guardian indeed says, we're closing down, tools down everybody. They could have just done that, which would have been very messy, not only for South African Airways, but for all the state-owned companies, because there's a cross-default clause in all the state-owned companies.
Yes, in fact, that is the nub of the story. Many people argue that if SAA had closed shop, it would have caused a run on other state-owned companies, and the value of them would have been further deteriorated, and would have been incredibly difficult to go to lenders' markets and raise the kind of cash that we require for Eskom and a whole range of other institutions.
Overnight, the government would have had to find 450 billion rand to pay off, to settle the debt at Eskom alone, just because 15.5 billion rand at South African Airways has become due. So business rescue is the best process that can be done. Let's repeat again. The best thing about this is that now for 3 months or for 25 days, the business rescue practitioner must present a plan to the lenders and other stakeholders and say, do you vote for this or not? He can, from now on, he will stop paying any debt that's due, and he can do that for the next 3 months. He can build up reserves. He can even cancel any agreements that have been made. He does not have to talk to the shareholder, to the trade unions, to the employees. He just has to do what he deems best. And of course, we've got in Les Mattison the best business practitioner, rescue practitioner we could hope for.
Tebogo, let's go to Eskom. Eskom, according to the newspapers, wants another 270, or rather 27 billion rand. We are at the moment in load shedding as we speak. It started at 9 o'clock this morning, and of course the excuses that are being made about wet coal and so on, as everyone's saying, does Eskom not have a roof over the coal that it collects? What do you make of just the public relations exercise about communicating the way in which government is managing the crisis at Eskom?
Look, I think that from a public relations perspective, they could do much better. I was told around 2016 that we're going to have load shedding until 2020, and I didn't believe them. It was one insider from Eskom, and it's 2019, and we're still going through load shedding, and we'll probably have it in 2020.
So your insider was right?
Was correct, and I was horrified when I heard that. If you look at the performance of Eskom, 4.6 billion loss in 2017, 2.3 billion loss in 2018. Now they're looking at 20 billion, and now you've mentioned 27 billion. It's horrific. I think we really need to turn around Eskom. And when you talk about SAA and Eskom, you're talking about drivers of the economy. There are certain routes that SAA takes that other airlines don't take, and it can really hamper our economy if these two institutions are not operating correctly. So the whole excuse that there was wet coal and so on and so forth, I think that we need to have a more comprehensive, long-term approach to Eskom, and just be honest. Just say we're going to have load shedding for the next 12 months, and then this is our plan to turn it around.
Let me disagree with Tebogo on one aspect. SAA can go today and life will carry on as normal.
Yes.
Eskom goes for 1 second, everything stops.
Yeah.
SAA is totally unsustainable, unnecessary, a whole waste of money of taxpayers. Nobody needs SAA other than the people that work there. The government doesn't need SAA. For the past 25 years alone, Karima, the audited financial accounts of South African Airways show that we have given them 57 billion rand in cash bailouts. If you've been doing the same thing for 25 years over and over and being promised that this is the last time, surely someone has to wake up at some point.
Look, I
mean, can go tomorrow, and everybody will land where they should be.
But if Eskom is too big to fail, why is it continuously allowed to fail?
Again, that same question applies to South African Airways. People in government absolutely have no clue what they are doing. That is why we still have Eskom in this problem. That is why we still have even something called South African Airways Petro SA, because the people that are in charge of the government today have absolutely no clue how to run businesses.
But Sikonathi, let me challenge you on this. The problem with a lot of our economy is that it's highly concentrated, it's monopolized, both in the public and in the private sectors. Monopolies are not good for anyone. They breed a culture of incompetence. They breed a culture of, we're too big to fail. Nobody else is in the game. We can't give the consumer a competitive price. Tebogo, should monopolies, both in the private and in the public sector, be broken up? Should more competition be brought in, other players be brought in?
Look, there's two ways to look at a monopoly. When you're making excessive profits, it gives you an opportunity to invest in research and development, which brings forth innovation. So there are benefits to monopolies, but not necessarily indefinitely. And I do disagree with Sikonathi on the issue of SAA. I don't believe that you could close it tomorrow and our economy will be fine, because there are certain routes that SAA takes.
Give me an example.
So the route to Richards Bay. There's no other airline that is providing a route to Richards Bay. Now, maybe it may not be totally detrimental to our economy, but I do think SAA is an asset to our economy. Now, talking about breaking up monopolies, we have the Competition Commission, which is doing quite a good job in ensuring that there's fair play in our economy to the benefit of even the most vulnerable people. So yes, you are correct. I think even in the issue of Eskom, there could be some sort of a private contribution to this, and Sikonathi looks totally...
I can see he wants to burst out of it. Come in here, Sikonathi.
I'm amused at the example you've just made to defeat your own assertion. South African Airways does not fly to Richards Bay. Airlink does. There's a start. You chose the perfect route. South African Airways does not fly to Richards Bay. Airlink does. Now, you say nothing will, there will be a lot of chaos if SAA fails. For 2 weeks, SAA was grounded by its own employees. Not a single day did anyone not reach their destination because SAA was not working. NUMSA and the Cabin Crew Association, they showed us. They succeeded beyond their wildest imagination to show us that SAA is totally redundant, useless, not necessary for anything.
That shocked
now,
me.
I want to go back to your monopolies question. The biggest monopoly in this country is the government itself. Eskom. Nobody else provides distribution, transmission, and generation of electricity. That's a three-way, the whole chain. The government controls the air traffic navigation. So it controls the skies of South Africa. Everybody that operates an airline operates according to the rules. That one monopoly is the government. And of course, the one other big monopoly that we don't think of as a business, the South African Police Service. Look at our crime rate. Monopolies are bad. Break them down. In the case of South African Airways, you've got the maintenance company, which is fast losing customers, customers faster than the airline company. If Les Matusson comes out and say, who wants to buy technical, 49%, 51% stake, you will have investors closing down the German operators that are coming to take away SAA Technical's business. Let's repeat this again. The people in the government, as Tito Mboweni pointed out in February, still think we are in the Soviet era of socialism and communism. It has not worked anywhere. It has not worked in South Africa.
But it's
we
not
have tried it for 90 years in the case of South African Airways.
Capitalism isn't in a crisis either. We see airlines, privately owned airlines in the United States, in other countries in Europe, sinking. We saw the biggest travel agency, Thomas Cook, going bankrupt.
Do you know what happened?
Hold on, let me finish. Going bankrupt, and more importantly, business executives paying themselves huge bonuses, despite the fact that they left hundreds of thousands of people stranded, employees without jobs. So your poster boy that is the answer to everything, which is privatization, is not doing so well, Sikonathi.
Absolutely, it's not doing so well. Do you know what happens when those companies crash? The market moves right along. The poorest of taxpayers, as in South Africa's case, they do not get burdened with giving money to subsidize rich people that can afford to fly. Poor people in South Africa need jobs, they need houses, they need sanitation, they need health care. You go to a medical clinic, there's no drugs because money went to bail out rich people who can afford to pay their own tickets in South African
They're not
Airways.
much better either. Let's move to another story that's made big headlines, and of course the big one is the health scare of former President Jacob Zuma. Now we know that he is desperately trying to avoid going to court over the corruption charges. He's no longer participating in the Zondo Commission of Inquiry. The story suggests that he is in fact in Cuba. Another poison attempt. Now I don't know how many poison attempts have been made here. We know that one of his former wives, Mantuli, was a person of interest. She's no longer a suspect in that case. What do you make of this? Is this just another strategy on the part of the Zuma camp to portray him as a victim, or is he really sick?
This one is a very difficult one because you'd need like inside information to get the true story of his health. He hasn't had many health issues while he was president. He was going across the country, he was singing Hinde, Lendlela, and he was quite one of those presidents that you knew was very animated and so on and so forth. So he's very healthy for somebody who's his age. So I'm not necessarily sure if they tried to poison him again as usual. Sikonathi wants to laugh about this. He's not buying it.
Tebogo, what is interesting is that, you know, the Democratic Alliance actually asked a parliamentary question whether the president has ever been poisoned. This was when President Zuma, during the Fifth Administration, was still in charge. And the written reply to that question that there was no poison attempt ever. So in the light of the denial from the presidency then, do you believe the story? Is this just another effort to delay the inevitable?
Maybe we should question the credentials of the people who manufacture the poison itself. Probably manufactured at South African Airways or even at Eskom. all of a sudden, the article Sunny World says Zuma cannot remember anything. He's going to go through a prosecution just now.
So he's now suffered memory loss.
Yeah, he suffered memory loss and he's been flown secretly to a hospital in Cuba. I thought the Cuban doctors are all out here trying to help us. Why would he need to go all the way there? And of course, I repeat this again, the people manufacturing our poison need to be upgraded. Perhaps we need more. We need serious professionals. David Mabuza had to fly to Russia. Again, he's here telling his own story about poison. So something needs to give, really.
Talking about poison and ANC leaders, the African National Congress is, of course, having a National Executive Committee meeting which starts today.
Yep.
And they've got quite a few issues to discuss. There's a lot of stuff happening in the municipalities. We saw in Tshwane, for example, the court ruling against people there. As someone watching what is happening at the municipal space at Tebogo, is the ANC making a comeback, or is these all hollow victories, and are the voters essentially the ones that are going to be suffering?
Well, what we're seeing is that there's no political party that has a majority mandate. And therefore, it speaks to the political dynamics in South Africa that perhaps voters don't seem to have a consensus over who should be ruling us in Gauteng. Yes, in the previous election, we did see the ANC did get a majority in Gauteng, but in the municipalities, nobody has a majority. And 1 minute you're the mayor, the next minute you're not the mayor. So it has become a circus.
Yes.
What I think should happen is that we should get these political parties working together, having consensus on principles, and not necessarily all grabbing for power.
But how much does principle actually feature in coalition governments? They are, by necessity, arrangements of expediency and convenience, isn't it, Sekonati?
It's absolutely, you've hit the nail on the head. This is about us politicians and us and our friends alone. Look at the new mayor of Johannesburg, immediately rewarding Inkatha Freedom Party with positions in the mayoral council and the Patriotic Alliance. It's not about the people of South Africa. Of course, the people of South Africa have to review the way they vote themselves. But the fact of the matter is there is not a majority, so it's what's in it for me. Those are the deals that have always been made by politicians, never about the people that put them there, and that will not change until the people of South Africa demand and win their own power back, demand to directly elect their president, to directly elect their member of parliament. I don't know if we need provinces, provincial governments. I don't know what we need them for. But the people must be able to say, for this constituency, I know who the member I voted for parliament, and I go confront him the minute he votes in a way in parliament that I did not mandate him to. Right now, you don't know. I can guess you don't know who represents you in parliament.
Well, let's shift focus for the last set of questions on the Sunday Times headline, which is, of course, interesting, moving away from issues of local governance, but politics of a different kind. In cricket, it says a bid to capture South African cricket stumped. Now, we know that there was a huge outcry when several senior cricket journalists were denied access in a blatant disregard for media freedom. Tebogo, how does Cricket South Africa imagine to survive this? How do they antagonize the very people that has to report on them and think that there will be no consequences?
Yeah, this is a huge, I think it's an own goal of perpetual margins. I think it's quite unfortunate what's happening at Cricket SA. The last time we had such a huge scandal was when Hansi Cronje was the captain of the cricket South African team. I think they've got a structural issue within their organization. There's no consistency around who is the CEO of the organization, and I think they really need to clean house and make sure that there's more consistency. There's already been permanent damage with Standard Bank pulling out as a sponsor from next year. So it's going to be very difficult to bounce back.
Okay, we are going to pull up our thermometer where we take the temperature of South Africa. If my technical team can do the honors, please, so that we can look at what is overboiling on the South African landscape. So we've got coalition governments, we've said, in municipalities. Sekonati, overheating. I mean, you were saying that citizens are not going to get their best, deal. What is the answer there?
Surely, in South Africa, I mean, people vote without even knowing who the candidate for mayor is. So you could say the voters deserve what they are getting, and they're going to see a further deterioration in all the services that I expect from municipalities. And I'm not only talking about Johannesburg, I'm talking across all the municipalities. Where you cannot hold the politicians accountable, then you must just sit at home. There's nothing you can do. And we gave away that power.
Let's see what's doing just fine. Okay, so, Tebogo, do you think that we are on a path to recovery, given the fact that SAA has gone into business rescue and that essentially Eskom is going to be broken up into three?
I think just looking at if I can look at the broad view of state-owned enterprises, they're not doing well. The loss combined is estimated at around 13.6 billion rands, and a huge contributor was SA and as well as Eskom. I think we should look at Transnet and Sunrail, who are doing relatively well.
I want to look like this at them, because I'm just scared to see what we're going to find.
They're doing relatively well compared to the others, because Sunrail is on a profit of about 6 billion, and Sunrail is on 3 billion, and Transnet is on 6 billion. So I think they're doing quite well.
Okay, gentlemen, I'm not even going to talk about what is all cool in South Africa except the weather in Jozi. Thank you so very much for your time. Well, you've had your fix for the week. See you again next Sunday. Thank you for watching.